What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, I thought it'd be a great idea for us to look at some players who are being forgotten in fantasy football this year. Now, forgotten means a lot of different things. But for me, forgotten means that these are players who were previously hyped, or players where I listen to podcasts and other YouTube videos, and I'm sure you do too. Please stay around. But, I don't hear anything about these guys that we're talking about. So today, I wanted to look at some players who I think are going way undervalued and just being completely forgotten about. And that way, when we get these players later in the draft, where they should really be going, we're getting steals and values. So without further ado, let's just hop right into it. So the first player that I want to talk about is Mike Williams, going as the wide receiver 30, 65th pick overall. And I'm going to look at my screen because I have a lot of stats, but I just can't believe this pick. I understand that Mike Williams has been kind of thrown the role of injury prone, right? I know he's battled injuries, but before last year, the two previous seasons, he played 15 games in each, missing one or two games, which is nothing major. Last year, he only played 13, and technically, I'm not going to count the one game where he played 9 snaps, right? So he played 12 games, which isn't awesome. But in his 12 games, he had 92 targets, 62 receptions, 870 yards, 4 touchdowns. You average these stats out over a full season. His full stat line would have been 17 games, 130 targets, 87 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I mean, that's a solid receiver. Sure, you have to factor in the injuries of it all, but I think he comes back, and he's battling an ankle injury, a rolled ankle. I mean, that is what it is. He's going to come back and be as healthy as ever, and I have no problem with him at his draft price of wide receiver 30. That's way too late. And I thought it'd be good to compare him to someone like T. Higgins. They're pretty comparable players. Big outside receivers who have big boom weeks and pretty down low weeks. It's pretty true. So let's compare this, right? T. Higgins last year had 109 targets, 74 receptions, just over 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Played 16 games, so you add in maybe one extra game there. He would have been around, 80-ish catches, 1,100 yards, and 7-8 touchdowns, right? But he's going at wide receiver 13 this year, where last year, Mike Williams was going as the wide receiver 17, and all of a sudden, he falls all the way down to 30. When Higgins was the wide receiver 12 last year, put up those numbers, and now he's going as wide receiver 13. I just think it's a great value there. They both have great quarterbacks and pass-happy offenses. I just don't think it makes sense. Mike Williams is a special receiver, right? I mean, you're going to get your really big boom weeks and you're going to get some disastrous low weeks. It happens. T. Higgins gives you the same exact thing. So I think these players are relatively the same. And I think, why would I get T. Higgins when I could just draft Mike Williams 2 to 3 rounds later to be my wide receiver 2 or 3 with big major boom weeks and low downside weeks, because you're getting the same thing from T. Higgins. Next on my list is Tua Tagovailoa, going at the QB 11, 96 pick overall. And listen, Tua was pretty good last year, right? He doesn't have the big arm, and we know that concussions are a big issue. But last season, he was on pace for 4,600 yards, 33 touchdowns, 10 picks. And that includes the games where he got knocked out with a concussion. So honestly, the 2 games where he got knocked out, he would have been on pace for probably about 4,800 yards, 35 touchdowns. That's a pretty elite season. And maybe if you don't want to call it elite, it's a really great high-end QB1 season. And I think if other guys were getting hyped like this, we saw Justin Herbert just do this jump 2 years ago where he threw for, I believe it was 38 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. Tua was right on pace. And I kind of trust Tua in the sense of, I like Mike McDaniel. I trust that offense. I like the weapons he has with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I think those are great, really, really great weapons. So I think Tua could definitely do it again. But I like it so much is I think he's just being kind of thrown away because of the concussion stuff, which fair, but I think at QB 11, if you're drafting this guy in the 8th or 9th round, if he sucks next year, if he just doesn't come back and he's not the same because of the concussions or whatever it may be, you didn't spend any real capital on him. So you can just cut bait and you could just take your Geno Smith, your Kirk Cousin late round pick, your Jared Goff pick. You could just pick one of those guys up off of waivers and you'll be okay. But I think taking the chance on Tua this year on a great offense with a ton of weapons, like I said, there's no reason this guy can't throw for 4,500 yards and another 35 touchdowns again and just be a top 10 quarterback. There's no reason outside of concussion issues. Next up on the list is another receiver, Michael Pittman, wide receiver 32, 67th pick overall. So he's going right after Mike Williams. And the thing with Michael Pittman is, I think he's just really talented, right? I think he's an awesome route runner. He's a big body to where I think he can catch some major touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go for 15, but there's no reason a guy like Michael Pittman can't go for 8 to 10 in a season. There's no way. So with Michael Pittman last year, I mean, the guy was 11th in targets, 8th in receptions on what was deemed a really bad year. And let's be totally honest, right? The Colts situation can't be any worse than what it was last year. It can't. You know, between the 16 touchdowns that Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger threw, along with their, I think, 17 or 18 interceptions, it was a disaster, right? But, you know, did the Colts really pick up anybody significant to take targets away? I think no. Did Michael Pittman get worse? Did Michael Pittman show no flash at all last year? I think he showed some talent on film. The only thing that could hold him back is if Anthony Richardson really is bad. And I just don't think it gets any worse than Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger last year. I just don't think it gets any worse. Kind of going at wide receiver 32, especially if you're in a full PPR league. I mean, the guy caught 99 balls last year, almost caught 100 balls in one of the worst offenses in the entire league. So I have a lot of faith that Michael Pittman can just bounce back. I don't need him to go for 1,500 yards. I need him to go for 1,000, 1,100, get near 100 catches and catch 5 to 6 touchdowns. And he'll be, you know, an upper wide receiver 2. That's all I need, especially going at wide receiver 32. I mean, this guy's completely forgotten about. I haven't heard anybody be in on him this year, Michael Pittman. So I think this is another steal that people are just generally forgetting about. If Michael Pittman can finish again and, you know, near the top 10 in targets, because he's kind of the Colts' only real receiver outside of maybe Alec Pierce, and if he can finish top 10 in receptions again, I just think that you're going to get more downfield throws from Anthony Richardson, who has a big arm. And I think this offense could just be a lot better. So I expect a lot more productivity from Michael Pittman this year. And the last guy I want to talk about, I wanted to throw a running back on this list. It's James Conner going as the RB23, 59th overall. Now, listen, you're not going to fool anybody by saying James Conner is an elite running back or really talented. He's solid, right? He's a big-bodied guy who can catch some passes out of the backfield. And the thing is, has he ever really had like a disastrous season? He's had some injuries for sure. And that's probably why he's going so low. That with a combination of the Cardinals offense being so bad. But I just think it's him and it's him only. And I know that sometimes can lead you into trouble saying the who else is there argument. What if they bring in some kind of rookie that they just decide to throw in? But I think at this time, right now, it looks like it's James Conner's show. And it's going to be a bad offense. But, you know, for a guy who I know can catch passes, there's no reason he can't hit 1,000 total yards, you know, get somewhere between 6 to 10 touchdowns in that range. And if he goes out with a Colt McCoy and Clayton Tune bad offense, which obviously isn't great for running backs, but what if he catches 60 passes? Then you just got a really great running back in PPR leagues and even half-point PPR. You know, there's not a lot of guys in the NFL who go out and catch 60 balls. And I think he can easily do it. And let's not forget, I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be out the entire year. I think he comes back maybe midway. So if you hold on to James Conner and draft him early, what if that offense turns around when Kyler comes back and becomes productive? If Conner stays healthy, then you just got a pretty good steal at, you know, not barely even being drafted as an RB2 in the probably 5th round. I think you could have a pretty good player. All right, and those are 4 players that I think are being completely forgotten about in fantasy football this year. If you liked the video, leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for plenty of content coming all over August. You know, we're heading into draft season, so if you're just getting back into the swing of things, subscribe, leave a like down below, and check out the playlist. I have all my fantasy football videos there. Stick around, stay tuned, and there'll be more videos coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.